All right, welcome to another deep dive, you guys. I know a lot of you have been asking about speaking English better, more fluently, with more confidence.
Yeah.
It's a big topic and it can feel kind of overwhelming. So today we're going to break it down and hopefully make it feel
A little less daunting.
a little less daunting. Exactly.
Right.
We've got a great article here. It's called No More Mistakes, Speak English Like a Pro.
Yeah. There's some great advice in there.
And we're going to kind of like pull out the most important tips that can really help you, listening to this, sound more like a natural English speaker. So you can feel that confidence kind of growing.
Yeah. And I think it's important to point out, learning any language, there's going to be bumps in the road. There's going to be mistakes. That's just part of the process. It's universal. Even for people who seem like they speak flawlessly, they've been there.
Oh, for sure.
So today we're going to look at, why these common errors occur, and then some practical tips to help you overcome them so that you can sound more polished and natural.
And confident. So let's jump right in. Let's figure out why these little mistakes happen.
Yeah.
Why do these linguistic gremlins make their way into our English?
Yeah. It's a mystery.
It's a mystery. The article talks about native language interference, which is a fancy way of saying, sometimes your first language can trip you up when you're speaking English. Can you explain what that means for the listener listening right now?
Sure. Let's imagine, for example, that your first language handles sentences, structures sentences a certain way. Maybe the verb always comes at the end of the sentence.
Right.
So when you're speaking English, your brain might subconsciously try to apply that same structure, kind of out of habit, leading to phrasing that might sound a little unusual to a native English speaker.
Right. So it's not wrong necessarily.
No, it's not.
It's just not how a native speaker would say it.
Exactly. It's just not quite the natural flow.
Yeah, the natural flow. It's like trying to
fit a square peg in a round hole.
Yeah, fit a square peg in a round hole. Okay, that's a good one. And it reminds me, I know when I'm trying to impress someone, maybe use my best English.
Oh, yeah.
I can fall into the trap of trying to make my sentences too complicated.
Right.
Too many big words. Does that happen a lot with English learners?
I think it does. It's that desire to sound more sophisticated or intelligent or whatever it may be. And so you end up using, longer words, more formal words, longer sentences, more complex grammatical structures.
Right.
But the irony is often the simpler, more direct language is not only easier to understand, but it also sounds more natural.
And more confident.
And more confident. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, clarity over complexity. Always a good rule of thumb.
I love it. Clarity over complexity. Write that down, everyone.
Yeah.
And speaking of things that can make us feel less confident, the article talks about this fear of making mistakes, which actually can lead to more mistakes.
Yeah, that's so true. That's such a fascinating thing.
Yeah. How does that work?
Well, when you're worried about getting something wrong, you hesitate. You start overthinking things, and that can disrupt your train of thought. It can disrupt your flow of speaking, and ultimately, it can lead to more errors.
It's like
It's like almost a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way. Yeah.
a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Like stage fright, but with speaking.
Right.
But on the other hand, a little bit of self-assurance, even if you have to sort of fake it till you make it, that can really help your speech flow more smoothly.
Yeah. So maybe take a deep breath and trust yourself.
You just trust yourself. You've got this.
All right. So the last thing the article mentions is this idea of not enough listening practice, which, to me, it's like trying to learn how to paint, but you never actually look at any paintings.
Right. You're just reading the theory, but not seeing it in practice.
Exactly. So how does listening help us, speak better English?
Yeah. Well, it's about developing what we call an ear for the language.
Oh, that makes sense.
Right. So it's not just memorizing the grammar rules from a textbook. You have to immerse yourself in the rhythm, the sounds of English, the way native speakers use it naturally. Without that exposure, you might sound a little robotic.
Okay. Robotic. So it's not just what we say, it's how we say it.
Exactly.
Right. Okay, so now we've got a better idea of why these mistakes happen. Let's look at some specific examples.
Let's do it.
All right, first up, the present perfect versus the past simple. I know this is a really common one that trips people up.
It is. I think it's, it can be tricky.
Yeah, it's subtle.
It's subtle, but it's really all about how you perceive the timing of an action.
Okay.
So the past simple, that's your go-to tense when you're talking about a finished action in the past. So if you say, for example, I went to the store yesterday,
Yeah.
it sounds a little off.
It does sound a little odd.
And that's because yesterday, that very clearly marks a finished time in the past. So the correct way to say it would be, I went to the store yesterday.
Okay.
Simple past tense.
So yesterday is the key there.
Yeah.
That's the signal. Okay, so then when would you use present perfect?
Right. So the present perfect, it's formed with have or has plus
Yeah.
that past participle,
Right.
gone, eaten, all those fun words.
Those are irregular verbs.
Exactly. The irregular verbs. And we use the present perfect when we want to connect a past action or experience to the present moment.
Oh, interesting.
Right. So the exact time isn't so important. It's more about it happened and it's relevant now in some way. Like if you say, I have been to Italy,
Yeah.
the focus is on, that experience, what it was like, how it might still affect you today,
Yeah.
not necessarily when that specific trip was.
Okay.
So it bridges the past and the present.
Oh, I see. That makes sense. So it's like if it has some kind of impact or relevance now, even though it happened in the past,
Yeah.
you use the present perfect. Got it. Okay, another tricky grammar point is subject-verb agreement, which sounds kind of basic, but it's easy to mess up.
It is. And I think a lot of languages don't worry about this as much as English does. It's one of those quirky things. But basically, the rule is the verb has to agree with the subject and number. So if the subject is singular, like he, she, it, the verb in the present simple tense, you add that S ending.
Right.
So if you say, she go to school every day,
She go.
it sounds wrong, right?
It does.
Because you need that. She goes to school every day.
Just goes.
Exactly. It's a small detail.
Small details.
But native speakers notice it.
They notice it. Okay, good to know. One more grammar thing. Let's talk about the word the. When do we need it? When don't we need it?
Yeah, the. That's what we call the definite article.
Fancy
Grammar term. And it points to a specific noun. But a very common mistake that learners make is using it with general concepts. So you might say, for instance, I like the nature.
I like the nature.
And that sounds a little strange to native ears.
It does.
Because nature is this big general idea. So you would just say, I like nature.
Oh, I like nature.
Yeah. Same thing with things like, love, happiness, freedom.
Oh, I see.
Those big concepts. But if you were talking about something specific, then you'd use the, like, I saw the beautiful sunset yesterday.
The beautiful sunset.
Because it's a particular sunset that you're referring to.
Okay.
So general concepts note the.
Got it.
Specific things, the.
Right. Makes sense. Now let's move on to pronunciation, which can feel kind of like
A whole different beast.
a whole different beast. Yeah.
Right.
The article talks about how hard it can be to pronounce new sounds, especially, a sound like th, which doesn't exist in a lot of languages.
Yeah, it's a tricky one for a lot of people.
It's like a tongue twister.
It is almost.
So what happens when someone tries to say like think, but they don't have that th sound in their language?
Well, what usually happens is they substitute it with a similar sound from their native language. So you might hear think become sink
Sink.
because they're using an S sound instead, or this becomes dis with a D sound.
Oh, dis. Okay.
Yeah, it's perfectly natural to do that. Your brain's just trying to find the closest equivalent.
Makes sense. Yeah. But the article has this great tip for actually practicing the T sound. Do you want to share it?
Yeah, it's actually pretty simple. So for both the voiced T, like in this, and the unvoiced T, like in think,
Think.
what you want to do is gently place the tip of your tongue between your upper and lower teeth
Okay.
and just gently blow air out.
Okay.
And for the voice sound, you'll feel a slight vibration on your tongue.
I can feel it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's weird.
It takes some practice, but it's really important for clear pronunciation.
Right.
And once you get it, you'll notice a huge difference.
Any words you recommend practicing with?
Yeah, like 3, thanks,
Come on.
1,000, things like that.
All right, good ones. So another part of pronunciation that we sometimes forget about is word stress and intonation.
Yeah.
And I've definitely been, in situations where I've stressed the wrong part of a word and people are just like, what are you talking about?
Happens all the time. And I mean, word stress, that's where you put the emphasis in the word.
Right.
And it can totally change the meaning.
Yeah, totally.
Like think about the word record. If you stress the first syllable, it's a noun.
Record, like a vinyl record.
Exactly. But if you stress the second syllable, it becomes a verb.
Record, like to record something.
Right.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Big difference.
Big difference. Yeah.
And then intonation, that's kind of like the melody of your voice, how it goes up and down.
Oh, okay.
That conveys emotion, it adds emphasis, and it plays a huge role in sounding natural.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So for our listener who's maybe like, I don't know, how do I get better at this?
Hmm?
What's some advice?
Well, the article suggests becoming a mimic.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. So pay attention to how native speakers pronounce words, how their voices rise and fall when they speak. Watch movies, listen to podcasts, really listen to the sounds
Yeah. Yeah.
and try to imitate them. Think of it like learning a song. You listen to the melody, you practice singing it.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
It's the same thing with intonation.
All right, cool, cool. So now let's talk about vocabulary, which is another area where sometimes, you might feel like you're not quite using
The right word.
the right word.
Or it just doesn't sound natural.
Right. And the article talks about this very common confusion between make and do,
Right.
which again seems simple, but it's not always.
Not always.
So how do we figure this out?
Well, both of them relate to actions, but make is more about creating something new or deciding something.
Okay.
So you would make a cake or you would make a decision.
Make a cake, make a decision.
Right. But do is more for general activities or tasks or work. So you would do your homework, you would do a job.
Do your homework, do a job. Okay, so make is like creative,
Yeah.
you
Yeah, more creative, more about producing something.
or making a choice.
Right.
And then do is just like
Actions, tasks, everyday things.
general everyday things.
Exactly.
Okay. Are there any like quick tricks for remembering which one to use?
Yeah, like a good rule of thumb is to think make for creation, do for general actions. But of course, English has exceptions.
Of course.
There are always going to be some weird phrases.
Right.
And that's where there's a lot of exposure to the language comes in handy.
Yeah. Yeah. Just kind of getting used to how it sounds.
Exactly.
Okay. Last vocabulary point.
Okay.
Those little filler words,
Ah, yes.
like, we all use them,
We do.
but, how much is too much?
Well, I mean, they're natural in small doses.
Yeah.
Everyone uses them. But if you overuse them, it can make you sound hesitant or like you're not sure what you're saying.
Yeah. It's like you're searching for the word.
Exactly. So the article suggests instead of using those fillers, try just pausing.
Just pausing.
Yeah, give yourself a moment to think. You don't have to fill the silence with ums and likes.
It's okay to have silence.
It's totally okay to have silence. It actually makes you sound more confident and in control.
More powerful.
Mm.
All right, so we've talked about why these mistakes happen. We've looked at some specific examples. Now, how do we actually fix them? The article gives us some really good strategies to stop making these common errors and speak more fluently.
Yeah.
And the first one is daily English immersion, which sounds kind of intense, but what does that really mean for someone listening to this?
Yeah, it doesn't mean you have to, pack your bags and move to an English-speaking country.
Not necessarily, no.
It just means surrounding yourself with the language as much as possible.
Right.
So maybe you listen to English podcasts on your way to work.
Yeah.
Or you watch English movies or TV shows.
With subtitles maybe, or without.
Maybe start with subtitles, and then as you get more comfortable, take them off. Well, I like that, yeah.
And read English books or articles, anything you enjoy.
Yeah, so it's just about making English a part of your life,
Yeah.
not just something you study.
Exactly, yeah. It's about making it natural.
Okay, cool. Now, this next one might feel a little uncomfortable for some people, but the article suggests recording yourself speaking.
Ooh, yeah.
I imagine some people are cringing right now.
Maybe it could feel weird, but it's so helpful.
Right. Why is it helpful?
Well, because when you listen back to yourself, you'll hear things that you don't notice when you're just speaking. You might hear pronunciation errors or grammar mistakes or just ways that you could say things more clearly.
Oh, that makes sense.
And the article even suggests comparing your recording to a native speaker.
Oh, wow.
Listen to how they say the same phrase or sentence, and that can help you pinpoint the areas where you can improve.
Oh, that's really smart. It's like a side-by-side comparison.
Exactly.
Okay. Next tip is to start thinking in English, which sounds kind of like a superpower almost.
Right.
It does, a little bit, yeah.
Right.
But it's really about breaking that habit of translating in your head,
Right.
from your native language to English and back again, because that slows you down.
Yeah, it does. And it makes it sound less natural, I guess.
Right. So start small. Describe the objects around you in English, just in your head. When you're doing everyday things, narrate what you're doing, but in English.
In your head.
In your head. It will feel weird at first, but it really helps build those connections.
Between your thoughts and English words.
Exactly.
Oh, that's interesting.
It makes it more automatic.
Yeah, more automatic.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, and then the last tip is to actually, practice speaking with a partner, which I think a lot of people know is important, but sometimes it's hard to find that partner.
It is, yeah.
So for the listener who's like, okay, I know I need to do this, but how?
Yeah.
What's your advice?
Well, there are language exchange apps and websites.
Oh, true. Online.
Yeah, where you can find people who are learning your language and you can practice with them.
Mm,
Or, a lot of tutors offer conversation practice.
right.
The key is just to do it. Speaking is a skill, like playing the piano.
Yeah.
The more you do it, the better you get.
And the more comfortable you get.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
where the confidence comes from.
So to sum it all up, it sounds like, becoming a more fluent and confident English speaker isn't about being perfect right away. It's about understanding why mistakes happen and then practicing, working on those specific things.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to make mistakes, and that's okay.
Right. Don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Embrace them. They're part of the process.
Yeah.
So our key takeaways from this deep dive are pay attention to those grammar rules. We talked about a few important ones today. Work on your pronunciation.
Yeah.
Really listen to those sounds, practice them, and build your vocabulary.
Yeah.
Focus on using those words correctly, and most importantly, immerse yourself in the language.
Make it a part of your life.
Exactly. The more you practice, the more natural it will become.
Okay. I love that. Now, for a final thought for our listener, I want you to, pay attention to English conversations today.
Ooh, yeah.
Whether it's, another podcast you're listening to or a movie or even just someone talking on the street.
Right.
And listen for the things we talked about today.
Yeah.
Can you hear those grammar points in action?
Yeah.
Can you hear how they're pronouncing those tricky sounds?
That's great.
Really tune in. And it's amazing, The more you pay attention, the more you start to notice and the more you learn.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like a treasure hunt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A treasure hunt for English fluency.
Love it.
All right. Thanks so much for joining us today. This was a great deep dive.
It was fun.
And we'll see you next time.